webinar. We're going to cover some of the details of the new Level 4 Operator Competence Scheme qualifications and pick up on any questions that you might have as we go along as well. So I think most of you now are well aware that we've got the new qualifications on. Whether or not you're as aware of the review process, I'm unsure. So I wanted to just make sure you're aware of how we got to where we are today. So following collection of learner data, so we collect learner feedback on every certification that we have, and following collection of that data, there was indication that the qualifications were a bit repetitious, that some of the language was outdated, and that actually they were in some places difficult to understand exactly what was to be expected from the learner. So following analysis of that feedback, we held a consultation in the early part of 2015 where we took in the views of employers and our provider network. And that led us to a revision of the unit bank and a technical review, which we did by holding a number of workshops around August, September last year. And then once we'd done that, we used our centre network to allocate total qualification time and guided learning hours to the new units. We did a final edit for consistency, and then we sought industry approval. We did that by speaking with the Environment Agency, with Natural Resources Wales, and with the Chartered Institute of Waste Management. Once we had all of that in place, we uploaded those qualifications to RITS, which is the regulatory IT system. So that's how we communicate with Ofqual and Qualifications Wales, that we've got new qualifications for to be regulated. We put those on and they became available in April 2016. So the new qualifications are essentially replacements. There's many more of the new ones than there are of the previous versions because, as you will see when we move a bit further through the presentation today, what we've done is create qualifications for not just the 12 units but also the 6 units and the 4 units. And the reason that was done was to give greater clarity to the agency in regulating the programme and also to industry and to operators. So they can now refer to their qualification with a full title, don't need to rely on the WAMITAB code as heavily as they have in the past, and everything essentially is more transparent and more easy to access. So in terms of seeking approval for the new qualifications, centres were asked to email our info.admin website by Friday the 8th of April. Essentially that was to confirm that they want to receive the automatic approval because some centres had ceased to deliver the QCF versions of these qualifications, and so what we didn't want to do is give automatic approval where it wasn't required anymore. And so the indication from you was to let us know that that automatic approval would be utilised by you, and then we can give it. We don't require any scheme approval for update onto the new qualifications because ultimately they cover virtually the same outcomes as they did previously. What we also wanted to know from you was which assessors and IQAs within your centre would be delivering those qualifications and want to retain approval, because we didn't need and we don't need AVR1 forms for existing assessors who already have approval to deliver the equivalent qualification. What we do need is AVR1 forms for any new assessors or assessors who want to expand what they're already able to assess or IQA. So important dates. The final registrations for the previous qualifications, the QCF versions, were on the 31st of March. Now, as long as we received your registration by the 31st of March, we will register it by that date. So if we received it on the 31st and we couldn't process the application until, say, the 1st of April, that's not an issue, because as long as we have evidence that it was received on the 31st of March, that's fine. The new qualifications, first registration began on the 1st of April, and any registrations now will be onto those new qualifications. And the existing the qualifications that existed previously, the QCF ones, will have their final certifications on the 31st of March 2019. So essentially, people who registered before Thursday the 31st of March will have 3 years to complete their qualification. This is just a view of the new risk tier table. We've just got one snippet of the hazardous waste for the high risk section here. And what you can see is that the level of risk is in the first column, as it always has been. A description of the waste facility covered is listed in the second column, and what you'll notice there is that where the exact same units have always been used, we've grouped them together rather than repeat them. Then we've got the standards rules permit number, as we've always had, the continuing competence code, so where people have to choose a specific continuing competence when they go on after their 2-year period. We've got that code in there to make that easy to find. And then we've got the qualification title and code. Now, each of the qualification titles and codes here are linked documents, so you can click on them, and what it will open is a purpose statement which explains what the qualification is for, what it covers, and it will list the units in there as well. So you'll be able to see exactly what units they're going to do. I know that's an important one for some people who have to add a couple of units to their offering and do maybe a bit more than just the average qualification. The other thing that the purpose statements cover is the hierarchy. So you'll notice on the website that we've removed the old hierarchy table. The updated version of the hierarchy table is not online. What we've done is put the hierarchy for each of the qualifications, the updated version of it, into the purpose statement. So on the back page of every purpose statement, which you can access from the risk tier, we've got the hierarchy for that very specific qualification. So essentially, you do it by qualification, not look at a huge table and have to search through to find it. So you should find that that is easier to use. We have kept a copy of the old version on the website so that you can use it if you've got people doing one of the older qualifications. But ultimately, this should give you everything that you need to know. Also worth mentioning, the hierarchy table itself, or the hierarchy process, is being looked at by us later this year. We've sort of had a look through it, and it does make sense that some areas are expanded and that we include maybe more qualifications as hierarchy than we have historically. So we'll look at that later this year and put some proposals to the Environment Agency and Natural Resources Wales for them to look at maybe an expansion. Okay, so supporting documentation. We published supporting documentation for you on the 1st of March so that you would have some time to get used to it before the new qualifications came in on the 1st of April. The purpose statements are all available from the main website. They're on the risk tier table. If you don't want to use the risk tier table, then you can go to qualification search for the qualification and access it from there. They're not available in the secure area, mainly because it seemed like a bit of overkill. The handbooks are available in the secure area, and there's a specific section for operator competence handbooks post 1st of April, so you'll see that that's a very specific section there. Also, along with the handbooks, we've got an FAQ document, which is a live document which we will add to over time, which answers some very specific questions around implementation of these new quals. The qualification and unit code list is also now available on the secure area. Sorry, I have to excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough. Yeah, that's also available now on the secure area. And the RPL exemptions and equivalent units document has got an appendix. Appendix A lists all of the accepted exemptions from the QCF. So it explains exactly which units are replaced by new units, and so there, if you've got learners who want to use perhaps a previously achieved unit against the new qualification, then you can use that RPL table to give you guidance on what is acceptable. We've also got a really useful document, the NQF to QCF to RQF table, which shows you the transition of these qualifications over time and shows you where the QCF versions took over from the old NQF ones and where the RQF ones took over from the QCF ones. Internally, we're using that to make sure that where assessors and centres and IQAs apply for approvals, we can see if they already had approval for the previous qualification, and it will be very useful to your centre coordinators, no doubt, in doing much the same thing your end. So I think that's it from me for now. I'm going to hand over to Helen, who's going to pick up some very specific examples that we've had cropping up recently.
Right. Good morning, everybody. So I know some centres have always delivered 12 units for sites where they only have to do 6 units according to the risk tier table, and we've had a few queries on this, so we've added some slides to help people. So where a candidate chooses to undertake 12 units in order to achieve a COTC, where they only required 6 on the risk tier table, they should choose the 6-unit qualification as they would in the risk tier table, and then add the extra units on, so they're selecting 6 additional units that they'd find in the level 4 structures document, and they just convert those codes on the exemptions table and pick them. The cost for that will be the £238 for England and Wales and £338 for Northern Ireland. Because I know it's not the easiest thing to understand, we've provided some examples. So, for example, a learner that wants to complete 12 units for open windrow composting, this used to be known as 4NBT NHO. They do MROC 3, and then they choose OCS 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 65. And that would be charged at RQF level 4 plus COTC on the fees list. This one was brought up the other day, and it's actually a bit different. So for transfer non-hazardous, which used to be 4NTSNH, you've got 2 options, because the 6th unit on the risk tier table has OCS 03 in it, I think. No, it's got whatever WM03 used to be in it, but that is not in the 12-unit qualification. So the learner can do MROC 12 and then do 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 65, which would make 13 units in total rather than the normal 12, and that would mean they get the medium risk qualification, the COTC and the unit certificate showing all their units. Or the learner can choose to complete just the 12 units from the level 4 structures document to gain the COTC and the unit certificate. And that's up to them. We recommend they check with their Environment Agency officer before they go ahead with either option with their centre, just to make sure they'll accept that. And I think I'm handing back to Katie now.
Okay, so Helen's talked about some examples of topping up from 6 to 12. I just want to clarify the use of exemptions in any claims that we have coming in. You'll all be aware that there were exemptions for units when we moved from NQF to QCF. In a very similar way, we've got exemptions from units when we've moved from QCF to RQF. The point here to mention is that what we can't do is accept NQF units as exemptions to our new RQF units. And that's because actually the time span between when the old NQF units were developed and achieved and now where the new RQF units have been set is such that a review of NOS has taken place in the interim period, so the National Occupational Standards have been updated since then. The units have been actually updated twice now since then, and the time in between gives us not enough confidence that the candidate has retained sufficient knowledge, skills and competence to achieve the new version of the unit without some form of sort of second check. So what we recommend is, rather than use exemption for NQF to RQF, we use RPL. So you could still use and take their achievements from the old NQF qualifications, but we need to do a mapping process against the new units to see which areas had not been covered, and then you would also need to check when the previous NQF units had been achieved and check if anything had changed for the legislation, guidance in that time, and whether or not the candidate can demonstrate up-to-date and current knowledge of the standards in the new RQF unit. So it may be that they have to do less assessment, because it may be that you can pick out some areas where you know, nothing significant has changed and they've demonstrated competence in the NQF qualification achievement. But in the majority of cases, you'll probably need to do some additional observation, assessment, and gain confidence yourselves that actually their knowledge, skills, competence are up to date with the current standards. So you can't just really, what we're saying is you can't just combine exemption tables and say, well, this was okay NQF to QCF, so it must be okay QCF to RQF, because the time period in between and the changes that have gone on during that time period is such that we could not be confident that the candidate had retained up-to-date knowledge. So it's just a caution against that, really. We've given guidance on use of RPL for older qualifications in the RPL equivalence and exemption document. That's document number 0140. Yep, Helen and I have both learned that number. And that's available on the secure area of our website. And you'll need that document probably regularly now anyway, because the Annex A has got the exemption table list in it. So in terms of continuing competence requirements, we've had a few questions about the grouping of qualifications the way that we have done now. So for instance, I think it's WE and ELV are in the same group now. You could achieve the same units. You might be working on an ELV site, achieve all of those units, and then within a year, so before your first continuing competence test comes up, you might decide that you want to switch and work on a WE site. What we're saying is that's perfectly fine. The units still stand, they're the same, but you would need to complete a continuing competence test for WE, and you'd need to continue to do that. So going forward, you'd need to complete the continuing competence test that suits the site that you're working on, and that's something that will be written into the WAMITAB CIWM scheme document. I know CIWM are busy updating that document at the moment, and as soon as that's ready, we'll publish that so that you've got some written guidance to that effect. And that's something that has been discussed with the Environment Agency and with Natural Resources Wales, in which they are supportive of. So essentially, continuing competence is key. If they want to transfer to a different type of site, it's just about honing that knowledge so that it can apply to different waste types. One of the final slides is about whether centres should transfer learners who are already on the QCF versions of the qualifications. And actually our advice is that unless the learner is going to struggle to complete within the next 3 years, there's really no reason why you should feel the need to transfer them. I mean, certainly if it was done after a period of time, you would have to pay a re-registration fee or an administration fee. And I think they wouldn't benefit sufficiently to be on the new ones to warrant you doing it. Ultimately, the Environment Agency will recognise both the QCF versions and the RQF versions. The competence outcomes are much the same. Yes, the new versions are less repetitive, and so in terms of assessor and IQA time, you may find that that is reduced. But in terms of looking at the best needs of the learner, there's no real need to transfer them onto those new qualifications, although we won't stop you if that's what you choose. That's a business decision. It's really just to say it's not something we'd advise, and it's, you know, it's sort of up to you. So all of the information that we've discussed today can be found on the WAMITAB website. Some of it is in the secure area. You should all, as WAMITAB centres, have access. That you may have slightly different access based on your role within the centre, but you should all have access to our secure area. If you don't have access to our secure area, drop an email to info.admin email address, and we'll set that up for you. And that's not an issue at all. But ultimately, if you struggle to find what you're looking for on the WAMITAB website, you can always call WAMITAB and speak to one of us who can give you a bit more guidance. I think we haven't received any additional questions as we're going through. So assuming, if I just give you a few seconds, if there's no questions, I think we'll close. I hope we've been able to give you a little bit more information about the transition, which so far is going remarkably smoothly. I will touch wood on that one though. But okay, I think we're going to close because I don't think we've got any questions coming in. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Again, if you've got any further questions, just drop us an email or give us a call. Take care.